So, as a practical matter, what kinds of things determine the elasticity of supply? Note the following. The supply will be more elastic when it is easy to obtain additional inputs. So the elasticity of supply for corn, for instance, will be relatively elastic. If corn prices are expected to be high next year, there's a high demand for corn expected, it's fairly easy for Illinois farmers to convert from soybeans to corn. Or large swaths of acreage in the Midwest are fairly easy to convert from one crop to the next, given enough time to do so. It's harder, for instance, to convert land to growing wine grapes in the presence of an increase in the price of wine. Wine grapes tend to grow in specialized areas like Napa, California, and most of that land is already tied up growing Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot or something like that. It's harder to convert land to grow wine grapes than it is to convert land to grow soybeans. So if inputs are easy to substitute, if it's easy to find new inputs in response to an increase in price, then we get a more elastic supply curve. It's also more elastic of a supply curve when we consider a longer range of time. It's difficult to convert a factory tomorrow to go from producing cars to producing boats. But if we have time, we see the price of cars falling and the price of boats rising. We have time as we build our next factory to devote it to boats rather than devote it to cars. When firms have a longer time period to adjust, they can respond in more ways to increases in price. Okay, so what makes demand curves more or less elastic? Note that demand will be more elastic when there are many close substitutes. If it's easy to switch from consuming product X to product Y, think Coke and Pepsi. If Coke tries to raise its price in the face of increases in prices for Pepsi, the demand for Coke is likely to be very elastic, right? When we have lots of things that we can substitute instead, if I try to raise my price, my customers leave for whatever those substitutes are. It also will tend to be more elastic when the product is expensive and when the product is a luxury. If we can do without it, if it's not something that we need, demand is going to be very price responsive. And if it's expensive, we take our time to shop. We tend to spend a lot of energy shopping in things that take up a large share of our budget. So when things are expensive, housing, which is certainly not a luxury, is expensive, but it's something we shop for. Luxury items like fine wine or steak or Cadillacs or whatever are those kinds of things that when they raise the price, we can easily substitute away towards something else. And again, just like with supply, over a longer time horizon, demand will be more elastic. If they raise the price of gas tomorrow, most of us won't change our driving habits. If they raise the price of gas and it stays up for a very long time, then we'll figure out alternative ways. We'll learn how to carpool, we'll learn how to take the bus, we'll take the train, things like that, things that reduce our reliance on gas. But tomorrow, there's not much we can do about it. Next year, if the prices are still high, we will have made some adjustments to our behavior. So over the longer haul, our elasticity of demand will tend to be, our demand will tend to be more elastic. Okay, a few simple definitions, and these definitions are the same for both the elasticity of demand or the elasticity of supply. When elasticity is exactly equal to 1, this means a 10% increase in quantity leads to a 10% increase in price along a supply curve, for instance. We say that we're in a situation of unit elasticity. If the elasticity is greater than 1, that means a 10% change in the price brings about a bigger than 10% response in the supply or the demand. And we say that this demand or supply curve is elastic. If the supply response is smaller, if the quantity response is smaller than the price change, then we'll wind up with an elasticity less than 1. 10% increase in price leads to a 5% decrease in quantity. Then we say that this is inelastic. A horizontal supply curve or a demand curve, one that's straight across, has an infinite elastic. It's infinitely elastic. Think about it, easiest is to think about the demand curve. This is a situation where if you raise your price a little bit, you lose all your customers. Even just a little bit, you lose all your customers. This is an infinitely elastic demand curve. A perfectly inelastic demand curve is one where the supply or demand curve is vertical, straight up and down. The quantity does not depend at all on the price. One example of this would be beachfront land. There's a limited supply of beachfront land, and all the price increases in the world for beachfront land are not going to create any more.